Uh, okay, hello, welcome, good evening, everyone, and today's Descripts session, which is going to be a book discussion on Gully Gully travels around India during the 2023 World Cup with the author. The book basically looks at India's 2023 Cricket World Cup campaign and its deep cultural impact. It celebrates our cricket heroes, both our players and passionate fans, and while exploring how the game unites a very diverse nation just I guess, and people's love for sport and competition and just what watching cricket together does to everybody. I'm Asha from the Word Lab team at IHS, and City Scripts is our monthly curation of book talks, panel discussions, and lectures and more that bring the city alive. And if you'd like to know more about what we do, we'll be sharing some of the links. For today's session, we'll be taking questions towards the end, so please share them in the Q&A box. And in the last 10 minutes of the chat, we'll sort of open it up. I'm very happy to introduce our speakers today. We, of course, have Aditya, who's the author of the book. He writes on travel, sports, and human interest for Open Magazine. He began his career as a journalist with the Indian Express, where he covered cricket World Cups, football World Cups, and Grand Slam tennis. He lives in New Delhi. This is his first book, and from what I can gather, he's had a very exciting day today, and so he'll probably tell us a little bit more about that. Moderator for this evening is Manish Dubey. He's chief of the IHS practice program. He provides strategic direction and guidance to consolidate and grow our program portfolio. Manish's engagements with public issues through media commentary is translated to the publishing of many opinion pieces and articles on politics, society, and cricket in digital and print. He's also an avid cricket fan. And we're very happy that he's moderating this session. So over to you, Manish, and I'll see you towards the end of it.
First things first, congratulations on a lovely book. And
Thank you.
And all the bouquets are very well deserved. I quite enjoyed reading the book. Let me dispense with two quick questions first, one of which you might have answered several times before, and one which is among the several that have stuck with me ever since I picked Gully Gully. So why the title Gully Gully? And would the book have happened if India did not make it to the last lap of the World Cup?
Thank you for your lovely introduction, Manish. Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting journey writing about this, writing about cricket in India. I mean, like everyone's such a big fan in any case, and everyone has an opinion. I tried to stay clear from making large opinion statements or like pieces or articles on these players who are fantastic by themselves. Even the ones who end up as failures have pretty much done things that people like you and I never can, which is, to represent India or to play at a decently high level. I wanted to make the book about um, this country, which is actually several countries in one, and try and tell the story of that country through a unifying factor. And cricket is one of the very few that gets people from the north, south, east, and west together, and the big chunk in the center. Everyone cares for it. I mean, they do wear India on their t-shirt, right? I mean, there is Bollywood and there is food and stuff like that, but all of that gets very regional and very splintered. Cricket doesn't. I mean, not when they're playing international cricket. So the title was kind of derived from this very idea. I mean, gully is a fielding position in cricket, just beyond the slip cordon on the offside if you're a right-handed batsman. And gully is also, a colloquial way of saying a street. So it kind of combines the two main themes of this book together, which is cricket and travel. I mean, like how do you travel without the gullies, no? And the idea was to kind of like move from the gully in cricket to the gullies in the streets of India uh, seamlessly, and keep moving back and forth between these two big ideas that kind of tell the story of Indian cricket, and try and see what one could come up with. And the result was this book.
Right. So now you speak about this. I mean, this book is essentially about that roughly 6 week period and the India's
Yes,
campaign. And during which time, I think you go to about 9 cities and cover 11 matches. So it's all
that's
packed
right. So
in 6 weeks. Uh, and in city after city that you go to, you experience the so-called cricket fever. You see it, you hear it, you feel it. And but one also gets the sense that this cricket fever is not coming from a love of the game, a pure, unadulterated love of the game.
mm.
It's also laced, um, perhaps pervasively, with a love for tamasha, with a love for celebrity, with a love for nationalist chest thumping. Um, and one of the things that I was wondering was, do, do you also think that this lacing is
Mm.
is irrevocable now? That the romantics among us need to um, understand that the now and the next gen will watch and follow cricket for reasons very different and will express themselves very differently.
I have a very pertinent answer right here, Manish, with what I experienced today. I was at the Firozshah Kotla for what has been Virat Kohli's return to the domestic fold, where he played a first-class game after 13 years, I think. And the madness and the chaos that we saw there today, I don't think anybody uh, really filled those stands because they wanted to watch Delhi versus Railways, an inconsequential game with respect to the situation of the Ranji Trophy right now. They all came to like lay their eyes on one man, right? Who happened to be fielding all day long because Delhi bowled Railways out at the very end of the day for about 80 overs, which is about 7.5 hours. They watched Virat Kohli stand at first slip or second and went absolutely bonkers, berserk. The World Cup is just like a larger extension of that, and we have more heroes there in Rohit and Bumrah and Virat and all these guys who come from different parts of India and form this beautiful team of ours. But you're absolutely right. This team is laced with or peppered with, or there's a certain tinge to it where the fan following has moved in a direction where it's irreversible, as you said. I mean, it's become more about it's more player centric. It's less about the team or the win or the art form or the beauty of what these guys are all collectively doing together on a cricket field. It is Virat scored 37 runs and Rohit got out for 31. Virat is better than Rohit. Let's all take to Twitter and have a war, right? I mean, it's also, and I love the fan, right? Like the fan
Mm.
is the person, the guy or the girl who makes the sport what the sport is in India. I mean, why isn't football as big? Football is massive all over the world. Why isn't it as big over here? Because it doesn't call for the same kind of passionate viewing and like following. We'd never fill a stadium like this, unless like a World Cup descends on our shores, and even then, it perhaps wouldn't have the Indian team. It's a lot of factors kind of come together in making cricket what it is. But I think the number one reason is this passion, this very fan following that we can kind of like berate sometimes, where it's all about Rohit versus Virat or Bumrah versus Ashwin or whatever it becomes, right? Like, but these are the same guys who kind of like fill stadiums despite how they're treated, like year in, year out. You can strip them of their dignity, you can lathi charge them as they're getting into the stadium, you can have the worst facilities, no water, the water supply can run out, you have the worst lose or no lose at all, and yet they will come back over and over and over again because they do realize that it's an absolute privilege to be one amongst those 60,000 or 53,000 or whatever the capacity of the stadiums are in India to watch these guys, right? So I really think they make the game. what it is in this country. And it's pretty much us Indians who are kind of like, waving the flag of cricket all over the world also right now. In the few other countries that play it, in Australia, in England, we saw what happened when India went to Australia right now during the BGT, the Border Gavaskar Trophy. The Melbourne cricket ground sold out because of us Indians, the ones living there and the ones now who have the spending power to fly from a Bombay or a Delhi or a Madras to Melbourne for a 5-day visit, watch their cricket and come back. So cricket's almost become like a pilgrimage, like a tourist destination. So because of all these factors, um, you and I, make the game what it is in this country today. We could, the spectrum could be from the knowledgeable fan all the way to the other end, which is, the person who's just there because he gets to see like his hero. Um, but without us, this game isn't what it is, not just in India, but anywhere else. So, yeah, and with that kind of like mass following, obviously comes the pros and the cons. I think the pros still outweigh the cons, but the cons, that side of the column is certainly growing. It's not fun to watch. What we saw in Ahmedabad during the India Pakistan match was certainly not fun to watch, where you basically had 110,000 Indians and no Pakistanis, no representation of them at all, and these Indians giving the Pakistanis a very, very hard time. It was, the chants were along communal lines, and yeah, I mean, it was disgusting to watch. But the same Indians, the very same Indians, when Pakistan was, Babar Azam's team was treated like this, and they went to Bangalore for their next match, had people walking down Queens Road towards Chinnaswamy Stadium with the sellers on the road selling Babar Azam jerseys in 2023 India, right? And people buying it, consuming it, wearing it, and entering the Chinnaswamy to show their love. So again, like we have all kinds of fans, and which is why I think they are the true story. Yes, some of them are a little more tinged in ways and respects that the game of cricket, the gentleman's game, doesn't really allow for. But is it really a gentleman's game now? I
In
mean,
many
it's
cases.
so fast paced, right? So yeah, I mean, we've been mimicking the West for so long when it comes to their big sports like football or American football or rugby or whatever. We have essentially become them, but the sport has still continued to grow. So the fan following also grows at the same time, and it comes with everyone.
Sure. So, just very quickly, since you brought up this sort of Ahmedabad,
Yeah,
Bangalore comparison, so there's a geography to this in terms of the way fans express themselves?
possibly, right? I mean, I just think there are more knowledgeable fans in some pockets of this country, at least in, the major metropolitans or wherever this game is played. And there are others that are still trying to mimic whatever they see on TV, and herd mentality always takes over. I mean, be it Bangalore or Chennai or Ahmedabad or Delhi, you have a vast section of the crowd doing something, and everybody else kind of wants to keep abreast. Which is why Mexican wave works, right? But that is the nicer end of it. At the slightly controversial end of it is this. I mean, we kind of like flex our where we kind of reside politically now on a cricket field. Um, and the divide is very evident when you're looking at it. I mean, when you're like a neutral spectator out there, and most journalists ought to be, and when we're watching it unfold in front of us, it gets yeah, it also makes for good copy. I won't lie. I mean, it's great for my profession, but yeah, it's not fun to watch, is how I'd put it mildly.
Now, this whole question of fan expression and the fact that, uh, and I'm glad you were saying that the knowledgeable and the sort of the pros, in a sense, far outweigh the cons, or at least are at the
Yes.
moment outweighing the cons. But
At
having
the
said
moment, that's right.
that, Um, but just sticking to this question of fan expression, one of the striking things for me um, in Gully Gully is this, especially in the context of the Ahmedabad batch, and I don't know why I'm coming back to that again,
But I
but
get just why, yeah.
so the sounds and silences in the stadium,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Um, so and here I see this toggling and your description of that toggling between a very DJ orchestrated um, cheering and chanting and whatnot. It's almost the equivalent of canned laughter in sitcoms, where you don't
Yeah.
trust the audience for a reaction, and therefore
Yes.
you give them that cue. And then there is this pin drop silence when the opposition side is doing very well. And you in the book, I remember that expression very well, where you say that some of us may never know the what you call the thundering beauty of unadulterated cheer because the
Yeah.
DJ has intervened. And of course, Cummins made the point about wanting to
Yeah.
shut the Indian audiences
Yeah.
up. But again, are we looking at a future where the in stadium experience just toggles between DJs and silences?
Yeah. So, the DJ experience was actually heard in Chennai. That's where I first sponged onto it, because when we were growing up, and I'm like a post-lib 90s kid, that's when I spent my childhood in that era. If you would go and watch any game like an ODI or a test match, no one really told you when to make noise. It was instinctive, right? Like you kind of watch a great shot and it could be by the opposition, you applaud because it's a very instinctive thing. That's why even toddlers, when they see something amazing, they gurgle and they clap, right? To slap your two palms together is like a fantastic way of making noise and rejoicing and telling the other person that I enjoyed what I just saw. This works in sport all over the world, across sport. It, in fact, works with all art forms, right? You see a fantastic painting, or you know, whatever it is, like a great performance in a movie hall. It's on a silver screen, and those guys have acted maybe 3 years ago, and the recording is over. But when something amazing happens, the great action sequence, you end up clapping, right? So that is not really the case anymore, in the sense that you have a DJ in most of these venues going like, when I say boom, you say rah, and like sheep, everyone will kind of like follow, right? Even if Bumrah is doing absolutely nothing except standing at the top of his mark, waiting to bowl. I mean, he's wondering what's going on. And they did that whole thing with the stadium lights, which is really disturbing for a day night game, because the batsmen have
Yeah.
literally got their eye in. That's why you say get your eye in. And then they started doing these disco lights with the floodlights, to usually to AR Rahman's music. And I think like a bunch of cricketers, even from Australia, complained about it. They went like, we just got our eye in, there's a drinks break, and now it's suddenly just like a lot of flashing lights. So anyway, coming back to sounds, um, the truest sound, and as much as I dislike the Ahmedabad experience, the truest sound was the sound of silence in both those matches, in India Pakistan in the group stage and India Australia. Now, Pat Cummins, being the wise man that he is, was posed this question in the press conference just before the final, and he said, "What do you think of these 110,000 people who are going to be so partisan?" And it's actually like a genius statement where he went like, I, and not just me, a lot of opposition teams have discussed this now. We rejoice in hearing an Indian audience go silent. That is our applause. And I think it's soon to be the case, right? And he pulled off what he wanted. I mean, in the
Absolutely.
sense that, like, can you imagine 110,000 people going absolutely silent? It is their medal, it is their victory. And I think I say this in the book too. That silence was the loudest sound. It was the most deafening sound, and ever more so for the opposition, right? In this case, Australia or Pakistan. I know Pakistan didn't do too well, but every time they hit that boundary, and it was almost like the Motera was empty. They must have felt like they've achieved what they've come there for. Australia certainly achieved what they'd come there for, which is to silence us once and for all, which is a shame because this is a fabulous Indian team that deserved to win. But it is there. See, if our fandom is going to kind of like, be funneled in a certain way, then this is the most immediate output. The opposition is going to start taking the victories that they can from whatever is kind of like laid out in front of them. And if you give them a lot of silence, they're going to start appreciating it. They're going to be like, that is our real win, not cheer. The new cheer is silence.
So you end up hunting for silence than applause.
Exactly.
Um, now, I'm just want to step, in chapter after chapter. You've got each of these chapters.
Absolutely, sir. Yep.
And there's almost this. There is this narrative about the city and any of the host cities, and it doesn't seem to differ significantly across any of the places, where there is this sort of pre-match bubble, pre-match bustle, where visitors are pouring in, cabs are difficult to find, hotel rooms are difficult to find, traffic is choked,
Yeah.
and so on. And then it peaks on match day when the actual match happens. And then this whole swirl of energy dies down as soon as the match is over and people are back to wherever they were. No, and this is a pattern that repeats across all the places that you go to, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether you consciously decided to capture this, because this is not something that people usually capture, right?
Right.
So is it something that you consciously decided to capture, or is it something that just happened because if you're writing an honest account, you can't just evade it?
It's a bit of both. I wanted to consciously capture it as well. I've often compared this experience to, those olden days circuses in India, the ones where, this big caravan would basically go from tier two town to tier two town. And when they show up with their strobe lights and they set up their little camps and their tents and they have the cages for the lions and the tigers. And, it really draws the townsfolk in. They can literally talk about nothing else while the circus was in town. I mean, I'm talking about like pre-lib India, mid 80s, maybe even late 70s, Gemini circus, things like this Rambo circus. They were huge. I mean, this is back when PETA didn't have much of a say, and like animals were very much a part of it, apart from the trapeze artists and the clowns and the other acts. And they would all show up in say town A, right? And they would be there for 3 days. They would have like three shows, like Coldplay does now, and the town could pretty much like think or breathe or eat nothing else. They consume nothing else but that circus. And then on the fourth day, the strobe lights go off, the canopies and the tents are wrapped up, and everything's put back into its place in the caravan again, including the cages with the animals, and they move away, and that town is dark and silent again, and they have pretty much nothing to do. And it's the next town about 63 kilometers away that lights up. This like a World Cup in India with uh, at least the 50 over World Cup in India, because the 20 over one, the one that we hosted in 2016, we ended up playing in the same centers over and over again. I think the BCCI for once did a very cool and wise thing this time, where they were like, let's showcase this Indian team across the length and breadth of this country so that everyone gets a little piece of them, right? And it works exactly like the circus. Like all these freaks who are just absolutely brilliant human beings on a cricket field, all packed together, move from town to town, from Chennai to Delhi to Ahmedabad to Pune, the whole circuit. And every, like, like Chennai hosted other World Cup games as well. The first one they hosted was India, Australia, but there was a whole plethora of games that happened there after India left town. But no one really seemed to care. This is a city that really cares for its cricket. It's like the audiences, you could see like vast swathes of emptiness, like in the Chepauk and stuff like that. Uh, because India has left town, they've gone to the next town, they've lit it up. So there's something glorious about it that couldn't be missed. Perhaps people haven't written about it because when cricket travelogues about the 1996 World Cup happened, this fabulous one by Mike Marcusi that I quote in the book too, called "War Minus the Shooting." He was more interested in how India at that point was kind of jostling for the power, to be at the power center of cricket. And it was kind of happening with people like Dalmia coming in and wrestling this World Cup away from the West, because otherwise it would just happen at Lords like every 4 years. So they were like, no, it comes here. So he was more focused on the political side of things. Um, Politically, I this country is very charged. For whatever reasons. And I do mention it in the book, but my focus was more on this. How do fans react in each city, in each country? As you rightly called it, the swirl, when the big swirl happens, do they actually get sucked in? And I'm talking about I'm not talking about the 60,000 who end up in the stadium, because they always are going to. I'm talking about people like my grandmother who doesn't care about cricket otherwise, but as this World Cup goes on, she can consume absolutely nothing else, right? She's reading about it, asking me questions about, like, why did this combination play? Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And my grandmother is just representative of many grandmothers here, right? And that's what a World Cup in India does. And if you have a strong Indian team at the center of it, and we really haven't had one like this one. I mean, we've done really well in previous World Cups in India as well. The one that we won in 2011 wasn't a team as strong as this one. I mean, admitted by the likes of Tendulkar and Dhoni, right? They're like, this team was just doing magical things. So people were even more in awe. And it was very hard for them to like break out of that. It was almost magic spell. And City felt it separately because of the way it was designed.
The Mohali guys left out though, got left
Yeah,
out.
they did absolutely, which is why Dharamshala got the kind of crowds that it did, right? Because the plains of Punjab kind of drained out and went up to Dharamshala. Yep.
I remember this Sharma character in Dharamshala who says "Little Lhasa and Pura Punjab." That's
Yeah,
so that's how the city transforms itself
that's right. Overnight.
overnight. So again, you talked about the city sort of rhythm and this roller coaster rhythm almost. Match comes in and whatever happens, and then it finishes. In many ways, your own journey in the city it mirrors that, no?
Yeah,
So you land up and you are
yeah,
scrambling for your press passes and your hotel room and you're being
yeah.
sort of taxis, etc. There's the business or pleasure of reporting on match day, and
That's
that
right.
you're out of it and you repeat the cycle again.
Yeah,
So, and this is something that happens in a 6 week span, 9 cities and 11 matches and so on, right?
yeah.
I'm just wondering whether all through this, if there was certain moments that you found, despite the exhaustion, etc., and so on, where you felt this was absolutely worth it. And there was,
Yeah.
and were there occasions when you felt that no, I mean, I wish this pace was a little easier.
Well, the exhaustion is real, but the thing is, I knew just how exhausting it was going to be, right? And also, see, this is how it works. It's in a country like India, which is so vast in every direction, and like with stadiums everywhere, and with the Indian team traveling to all these places. It's firstly extremely difficult to get from point A to point B when there's such a pressure on the resources, such as like flight tickets or hotel rooms or whatever it takes, no? So I wanted to capture what the regular fan goes through. And I was kind of in um, you know both an enviable and not so enviable situation, which is when I covered these World Cups in the past, in the early 2010s, be it football World Cups in Brazil or the 2011 World Cup for the cricket one. It was all for the Indian Express. So I was bankrolled by a really big newspaper where all I had to worry about was the quality of my writing on that day, and to make deadlines and to break stories and to find some interesting stories. Because hotel stay, travel, access into the press box, access to the stadium, every journey is taken care of. Like absolutely everything. I mean, like you feel like a prince, right? And you're completely privileged. Like all you have to do is wake up in the morning, and voila, in like a few minutes, you will find yourself in a press box watching the match from the most privileged seat in the house, right? That wasn't the case now. Now that I work for a political weekly, it's not a cricket magazine, neither is it a cricket portal, neither is it a daily, the ones that they kind of give preference to. So in every way possible, I had a hurdle, which is I had to kind of bankroll my own travels, stay in the not so nice part of towns, but which also worked out because you get the best stories there. So I was kind of also looking at it as a to be author, and like a person who has a sense for a good story by being a writer for so long, and knew exactly where to stay, which is you know um, live in hell and find like heavenly stories to write, right? Because if you stay at the Taj, I don't think you're going to be telling too many cool stories about your experiences trying to get to a cricket match. But that's the thing. So I was just trying to see what it was like for the rest of the fans, the billions in this country, or at least the hundreds of millions in this country who care about cricket, who want to be at the stadiums, and not just one. They want to watch the match in Delhi, and then they want to go to Lucknow and watch the next one. I realized how hard it is for them because this country is vast. There aren't too many flights taking you from tier two town to tier two town, especially the journey that I described from Pune to Dharamshala. It was impossible because the turnover time was just 3 days
Mm.
between the India Bangladesh game and the India New Zealand game. And yet I had to be there because I had this book, not even so much for the magazine, and my accreditation and all of that is slightly weaker than everybody else's. So getting to a place is hard, getting inside the stadium is hard, and then when you finally are rewarded with cricket, if you can pull all of this off, if all the stars align, which they continued to, because I mean I pushed very, very hard to make everything happen, then you get to watch the match. So it was very similar to what the real spectators go through, right? The ones who I really think are the heroes of cricket in this country are the fans. So I got the full on fan experience. It was extremely exhausting. And to come back to the last part of your question, very, very rewarding because it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And certainly Taj wouldn't allow you to have a bath in a stranger's room like you had in
That would
Kolkata.
be very. That was Calcutta. I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about over here. With some incredible experiences. And these are the ones that were vetted and allowed to be in the book because
Okay.
some of them get a bit more scandalous and salacious and maybe nefarious. And so, I had to leave a lot of those things out. But being a fan in India is not easy. I mean, especially for the big events, because we don't really have the infrastructure around it. I mean, like Dharamshala, for example, it's a mountain town. It's this layer cake ecosystem of Dharamshala, Mukladganj, and Dharamkot. And it's a place that's used to like Tibetan monks and Israeli hippies, right? Like when you suddenly have like if the stadium seats 60,000 people, there were 120,000 people there trying to vie for tickets. Where are they all going to be put up? And like cars that are not suitable for mountain drives are being driven up, and a lot of them, more in Hosh than Josh, or the other way around, Josh than Hosh, and burnt clutch plates everywhere, like stalled cars, like accident zones, absolutely everywhere, because you can't improve the quality of those roads. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. But like all that cricket was funneled there because Anurag Thakur is like the chief of the HPCA, has also been the president of the BCCI. Now it's one thing to sit on the very top of the pile and like draw cricket in, but I don't think he realized what it was going to be like when
Well,
150,000 people show up in their cars from Punjab, because Punjab was denied a game, which
mm,
made this the perfect storm, right? Like what that place felt like, what it even felt like to get from Mukloidganj to Dharamshala is actually a story, let alone from anywhere else into that into the epicenter.
So I also got the sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as Dharamshala is concerned, that it's not like all the locals were very kicked about this whole thing of, this advent of hordes. But also nobody wanted the show to go away because it's good for business.
It's great for the economy, But yeah, I mean, you kind of see this. I can draw a parallel to cities around the world that have now become like tourist destinations. You go to a place like Rome, which basically has more of us than the actual people who are living there, or like Nassau in the Bahamas or whatever, like resort towns or extremely popular cities. The locals kind of have this love-hate relationship with the ones who are coming in there because they are kind of like filling their back pockets with the bills, but they're also not very understanding of the local culture because there are just so many of them. So, the natives, if I may put it that way, do get a bit pissed off and bugged. But it's a give and take, right? So I think Dharamshala is experiencing something very similar because there is no space like in I don't even want to go to Chennai or Delhi because these are massive cities, right? Like it's not even a Ranchi. Like, there's no place to sponge everyone up. Like everyone is right there in front of you because there are limited hotels and limited roads and limited places to wine and dine and limited roads to take you to the destination. So everyone's right there in your face, completely overwhelming the place with their attitudes and cultures. And uh, Dharamshala is a place of quiet and peace and tranquility, and it's not for those few days when cricket comes to town, right? So it's very interesting. It's great for the economy over there, but it's yeah, exactly like you said. I mean, I think they're very happy with the money they're making, but at what cost sometimes, no?
And I think they're aware of the cost because a lot of people sort of hint at it. No? Uh, so you spoke about the exhaustion and all that, and I really like that particular collective noun that you have coined about the rage of rejects.
It rejects. That's right. Yeah.
So genuine rage, and I mean, it was. How did
No,
that?
it's rage all along. I mean that was just the. I said that in terms of my match day pass being cancelled because there were uh, I wasn't prioritized because there were basically newspapers from around the world and the big ones in India and the the vernacular ones which take precedence over absolutely everybody else. So the ones like us, the ones who work for magazines who were rejected, I thought I'll club us in a collective, but it holds true for the whole World Cup experience, right? I mean, our audience today, if any of these guys or girls try to go and watch any matches, they will completely agree with what it takes to basically just get inside a stadium, even if you're lucky enough to hold one of those. It's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, every ticket is a golden ticket. Like, it's absolutely revered and worshipped. Yet you're going to go through so many problems to just get into the stadium and get out, sometimes not even in one piece or with no peace of mind. Like for 8 hours, the loos are all occupied. Like, where are you going to go? Like, there's no water in the stadium or whatever. So this country is a rage of rejects when it comes to one of these big World Cups coming around. Because you must also understand, Manish, that for say a World Cup final that seats a lot of people, like this one, Motera seated 110,000 or 120,000. They've been a bit vague about that number. It's a huge number. It's absolutely massive. Yet the number of people who are actually applying for it are close to like 500 to 600,000. So the number who have not made it are still extremely angry, right? And I speak for all of us, the ones who didn't make it.
So, I mean, amidst all this rage and exhaustion and all that, so food and drink is a big part of your coping and recovery. I mean,
Isn't it for all travelers? I mean, Also, I've said this for a while now. Even when I was a journalist with the Indian Express, say covering a tour in South Africa or England or wherever, right? We are basically at the cricket ground till about 6 or 7 in the evening if it's a test match, 10 or 11 at night if it's an ODI, or similar time if it's a T20. And by the time we finish filing for our newspapers back home, it's about, say, let's go with white ball cricket. It's about 12 o'clock at night. We are in some of the most beautiful places on earth, like Cape Town or Rio de Janeiro during the Football World Cup. The only time I really get to see the city is when everyone else is sleeping. It's from 12 o'clock at night to 9 in the morning, right? So the places that are open at that hour are the ones that are predominantly watering holes, I think, and also like some great street food places are open. So that's become a big way for me to understand any city that I go to. And I've kind of, it's inculcated because of these travels. And I kind of just, used the same formula, the travel formula. There are no formulas for writing or to experience something. But the same way I travel, I wanted to see what India is like if I try that. Will places be open at 3 in the morning in Gomti Nagar in Lucknow, for example? Yes, they will be. I mean, anywhere cricket goes, there is a good enough whatever, like like a city or a town or whatever it is. You will always find a pocket where you can be wined and dined, and you will always find enough people if you're friendly enough to show you around the city at whatever hour. So yeah, my modus operandi would be to like sleep by 9 in the morning in the cities outside this country, wake up by 12 and just do it on repeat, right? Like then cover the next match, make the next deadline, check out the city at night and go to sleep.
Okay.
And you really get to see a lot. You get to see the essence of the city there. You really do, because it's far truer than the noise and the bling that you see during the day.
So all through this period, I mean, you also write about your conversations with a number of people and your interactions
Hmm.
with people. There are hoteliers and there are bootleggers, all sorts of characters, right? Um, Cricketers who have made it, who haven't made it, who want to make it,
Yeah.
all sorts. Um, but I'm just focusing on the well-known names, let's say, that you've talked to during the course of the book, though some of the others are very colorful. I remember Kamlesh, the bootlegger,
Oh yeah.
in stalking you, etc. Uh,
Yeah.
but um, but of all the well-known conversations that you have with the well-known names, personally, the ones that sort of that I liked reading about were the ones with Saurav Ganguly and Mayanti Langer. They convey a
Right.
certain amount of humor and poise and dignity, and I really enjoyed reading about those conversations. But which were your favorites?
Yeah, I would kind of like zone in on exactly these two also. I even enjoyed talking to the people who are considered conventional failures, because I wanted to kind of tell. I'm deeply ridiculously attracted to the concept of failure, right? Because especially in cricket, it's so easy for us to point at a fellow and go like, this guy's useless. He got hit for 30 runs. He never played again. He's kind of used as a trope thereon, as almost a cautionary tale to say don't become XYZ. But XYZ has done wonderful things. He's come through the system. There is very little nepotism here. I mean, you'll get found out at like the age group level itself. So it's not like even the son of or the daughter of a certain player has made it all the way to the Indian team because they were given that push. You wouldn't make it all the way there. You could perhaps at best make it to the Ranji Trophy, right? But you still have to do well there to be noticed. And especially in like modern day cricket, in today's Indian ecosystem of cricket, like there is no place for nepotism. And yet people like Stuart Binney are constantly called out, right? So when and Stuart Binney happens to be Mayanti's husband. So I did a feature on Stuart also a few years ago, which kind of like drew me into this line of thinking, which was he was like, been man of the match in a test match in on a very difficult England tour. I've taken 6 for 4, which was our best ODI bowling figures until very recently, until Mohammad Siraj broke it during the World Cup. And yet people say that I did not deserve my place in the Indian team. I'm the guy who got hit for 30 runs, right? So he's made it to the Indian team, and yet people are ridiculing him. So when I spoke to someone like Ravikant Shukla, who was, for those not in the know, he was Rohit Sharma's captain in the Under 19 World Cup. And he was kind of destined for absolute greatness, as most people are, because his predecessors were Mohammad Kaif, who did it in 2000, and I have a feeling it was either Shikhar Dhawan or someone like that. And the one immediately
Chand.
after him was, sorry,
Unmukh Chand.
Unmukt was later in 2012, but like there was Virat Kohli in 2008. This guy was in 2006. So you're surrounded by people who made it, right? And he was supposed to make it too, and he didn't. And to kind of see his, you know, um, the fact that he's so open about what it feels like to have not made it. And especially at a time when Rohit Sharma has come to town with his World Cup almost winning team, a team that looked like it was going to win the World Cup. And he's basically talking like an outsider, as someone who was once in the presence of Rohit but kind of couldn't cling on. Yeah, it was deeply moving stuff. But Saurav Ganguly's interview was very special because he basically spoke to me about his greatest quality, right? Like quality of leadership. And with all these voices in different cities, I thought I would strike gold if I could find anybody who it could either be in the periphery of cricket or kind of towards the center, wherever, no matter where. But they not just tell me the story of their lives in cricket, but they tell me the story of that city also. And who better to tell the story of Kolkata than Saurav Ganguly, right? And he didn't just tell me the story of Kolkata. He told me the story of Kolkata through that fantastic Test match of 2001, where we were down 1-0 against Australia. We were trounced by them. Steve was Australia by the Bombay Test match. Follow on in Calcutta, and often this story is told through so many other heroes, VVS Lakshman, Harbhajan Singh, Rahul Dravid, but it's almost never told from Ganguly's point of view. So when I got to sit down with him, I was like, please, let's just unspool the Kolkata test of 2001 slowly. And he was very happy to do it. There are lots of stories around the story of the Kolkata test, which is Kolkata itself, about him being from Behla and his mother-in-law bringing food for him, and how all of these things play a very important role in that one test match win that kind of like changed our fortunes. Absolute pathbreaker of a man, pioneer of a man, because every Kohli is basically just a +100 version of Ganguly's version of captaincy, right? We didn't have like these aggressive, I will give it back to you the way you gave it to me kind of captains in the past. It simply didn't happen. We had good captains, but we didn't have aggressive ones, like vocally aggressive ones. Ganguly is that guy. And Mayanti is just as big a path breaker as Ganguly in the field of broadcast. She tells me the story of Bangalore, but she also tells me the story of herself and her husband Stuart and what he went through. After he got hit for the sixes and he got dropped, and there were death threats and stuff like that. But she, being a woman broadcaster, kind of became the face of broadcast in what we rightly or wrongly call a man's world, right? So how did she do that? And her story is just as fascinating. Her journey is just as fascinating as Ganguly's. So I try to find these people who tell me the story of a city and themselves and cricket. And with a few of these people, I think I got very lucky. And I was lucky enough, to get them to speak to me, and then for them to really open up, because they could have just like given me a very casual, superficial interview, but they didn't. I mean, all these interviews ran for like 2.5 hours, and I came out of them with the best sort of problem, right? Going like, how am I going to fit all of this into one chapter or each of their chapters?
The other sort of quote unquote failure that you have written about, but not in the book, is Sudhindra. which is
That's
another,
right.
which was another remarkable story that I really enjoyed reading. But just again, I have a copy of the book right here, and I'm just looking at the cover, and I also remember the contents inside. So there are these sort of sports writers who are named, who find frequent mention, who you doff your cap to. There's Osman Samiuddin, there is Sharda Ogra, Rohit Bijnath, um, Rahul Bhattacharya, etc. Um, and all of these, I imagine, are people you enjoy, have had an influence in some way or the other in how you sort of
Absolutely.
business. I'm just wondering if you had to pick one quality from each.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Rohit's language for sure. Rahul Bhattacharya's way of telling a story. I mean, it's priceless, right? Like he wrote Pandits from Pakistan, the original cricket travelogue, which has been an inspiration to so many of us. And I've not tried to mask it in this book at all. I've constantly said how much he's influenced me. I think he's like the greatest storyteller in. I mean, there are basically lots of shades of V.S. Naipaul in him. Sharda Ogra's tenacity. I mean, again, like a woman who's been so. I mean, she's not just carved a niche for herself in like this world of male cricket world of male cricket reporters, but kind of like stood head and shoulders above all of us, right? So I wouldn't even say most of us. She's better in every which way than all of us put together. Um, Osman, of course, very few report on Pakistan with his kind of tongue-in-cheek way of dealing with even like the greatest of crises, because Pakistan always seems to have it, and he always somehow manages to make it funny. Uh, there were some situations in this World Cup too, the ones that we've already addressed, where I thought if we can bring a bit of humor into dealing with it, it might just be better than a lot of garbled rage, right? So all of them have lent a lot to just cricket writing in general. And I've been lucky enough to kind of, have this tapestry in front of me and take whatever I want from each of them. And they've all been very kind to say nice things about this book, and also help with blurbs and quotes and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, in some ways, I was just trying to you know take the baton and run, and I hope I did it with Gully Gully.
Hmm. So I guess we are nearing the end, but I just want to bring up your book dedication to the students of Kota, and
Mm.
your whole appeal to let them chase their dreams, just like Virat and Rohit have.
Yeah,
Uh, I know you've written about how tough life is there, and how and the um, and the very brutal ecosystem they contend with.
yeah.
Uh, but you must have felt it very deeply during your travels to bring it up in Gully Gully.
Firstly, thanks for reading my book so closely, and fabulous questions all along, Manish. But yeah, this one. So I was in Kota just before the World Cup. I was doing a human interest story because of the suicides that we heard about in 2023 over there. The count had gone up to about 27 because of this extremely oppressive system. And when I'd gone there, they all just closed ranks around what's making money. I mean, the students could never talk. The police and the politicians didn't care. It was almost like, someone being diagnosed with cancer and you giving them a band-aid, right? They were like, let's cure the suicides by taking the spring off the fans and stuff like that. And it was really hard for me to see. And the kids, when they finally did start talking to me, all I mean, in almost in one voice, wherever I met them, whether I kept them anonymous, whether I didn't, it was unanimous in the sense that they hated the system. They were just doing this because the parents had kind of like pushed them into this, and also threatened them that if you don't crack JEE or NEET, I'll do falana falana to myself, or hamara naak kat jayega, or stuff like that. So I realized to blame the system makes no sense, because the system kind of like breeds this contempt, right? But it was very, I very quickly, or over a long period of time. Figured out, but I figured it out quick enough for me to like follow this thought in my head, and the kids helped me understand that this was the right way of thinking, which is at the end of the day, parents with misplaced ambitions are the ones to blame for the fate of all these kids in Kota. And the place really shook me. And I did the World Cup immediately after that, while I was constantly thinking about them. Even as the story I wrote on them kind of like blew up, uh, the whole idea of writing the story was to write it from the kids' perspective, and so that like future parents don't send their kids there. So as I was writing this book, I had those children in mind. Those 10th, 11th, 12th standard kids who are now appearing for those exams, and I just wanted to tell them that they are also allowed to like pursue and follow their dreams. It's way better than standing in a queue to be number 4,000 in the medical exams. Virat certainly didn't do it. Bumrah didn't do it. They didn't think they were going to become Virat or Bumrah. They just enjoyed playing cricket the way I enjoy writing, or the way some of them enjoy dancing and singing. So I thought that dedication was perhaps the most important part of the book, where I tell them that, look, here, some of you met me. I've written this book. I followed my passion and I managed to write this. You guys do too. We have enough doctors and engineers in this country.
No, I remember also this piece that you wrote about, I think, Ishan Sharma, where he says that, मेरे माँ बाप ने ये नहीं कहा कि आप ये मेरा लड़का मेरा क्रिकेट खेलेगा तो मेरी गरीबी मिटाएगा.
Wow, that's right. Yeah, that old article, but that's absolutely right. So some of them get very fortunate, but others, especially the ones in that system, that don't. And there's no way out of it.
Okay, so we have a question here, and this is from Geeta Krishnan, who I know is who breathes cricket. So he says, you speak of the change in the cricket fan. What has been the change in cricket writers? C.L.R. James famously took cricket, beyond the romance of Cardos and the like, and many of you doing that more and more now.
No, I don't think so. If I can be brutally honest here, we've kind of seen the direction in which cricket journalism has gone. It's not too different from the fandom. Everyone kind of just, the PCCI is run by the political party that runs this country. So any kind of stray or contrarian voice is very easily crushed, and worse, accreditations are kind of snatched away. So nobody really wants to not toe the party line, or kind of like stick their necks out and say what they really feel about some of these old dinosaurs kind of like hanging around in the cricket system and being given a much longer rope and leeway than everybody else. Because they have a lot to lose. Their publication has a lot to lose. They won't be allowed inside the next World Cup or whatever, right? So it's just cricket journalism has gone the way perhaps football journalism did in England all those years ago. Everyone's kissed the ring. You have to kind of like look away from conventional media to see voices that are saying what ought to be said now. I don't think journalism in cricket journalism in India is in a good place generally.
Okay.
I mean, overall, there are of course some fantastic voices like the ones that both Manish and I mentioned, but as a rule of thumb, I think it's kind of strayed from where it was from when these great men were writing and great women were writing.
Just a couple of things that I want to specifically mention that have sort of stuck with me after reading your book. And thank you for both. So the first is the line about the three great loves of Manas Labuschagne, batting Steve Smith and batting with Steve Smith.
That's right.
And the second is about this great tip about trying chicken shawarma on a bladder full of beer. Preferably.
Yeah, that's in Bangalore. That's right. Yeah, like I said, lot of the travelogue writing happens when the night is still young. So yeah, there's a lot of intoxication in the book, as you've seen, and there's a lot of like food consumed immediately after that. So
and I'm wondering about this great state beer that I haven't heard of. So
yeah, it's big in Pune, by the way. So do try it out. They've got a range of stuff, and It's great. They're not paying me to say this.
Okay. But great. Thanks. It's been a wonderful conversation. Really enjoyed talking to you. I hope people who are listening in enjoyed as well. Pooja, you want to come in?
Thank you for the platform, IIHS, and thank you, Manish, for the research that you've pulled off. I've seen how minutely you've read it. Thank you for that, and thank you for appreciating the book. I mean, it means a lot.
Thank you guys so much. This has actually been really fabulous. And I think what struck me the most is I feel like even if you don't follow cricket as immensely or deeply, but I think it's the idea of the fandom and just I think traveling through these spaces and seeing how cities change, how people's stories sort of like carry you through all of this. And I think this has been really wonderful to listen to the two of you chat about this. And I hope the people who've attended have enjoyed it too and have either read the book or are running to sort of like get their copy.
That would be great. The latter will be great.
Read, folks. It's a nice one.
Yes, do buy and tell us what you think. So thank you again so much.
Thanks,
and
Asha.
We'll be doing series scripts again next month. So watch out for our socials and we'll tell you what we're up to. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me again.
Yes, good night. Bye.